Evaluation is important for outreach to Indigenous students for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a really healthy questioning of whether the goals of the program are being met. It helps us to understand whether the activities we're doing are effective and that they are being received well, not only by the participants, but also by other stakeholders. So if we're working with schools, for example, finding out whether the school principals or teachers that are involved felt that it was a worthwhile and helpful experience. So there is a bit of fear around it because I think there's a sense of accountability that this is bringing us into account. The reality is that evaluation actually provides a lot of rich information about whether or not the effectiveness of the program and the way it's being run is done well. I think we need to remember that we evaluate ourselves in a personal sense just as much as we evaluate in a professional sense. It's about reflective practice. So many people keep a journal, and what they're doing is they're evaluating what they're doing, whether they're reaching their goals and how they're getting about it and pulling some evidence together. What we're doing with Indigenous outreach evaluation is the same thing in a professional setting. We're seeing whether what we're doing works, whether it works for all of the participants. So what we find with Indigenous outreach is there's lots of stakeholders. There's university management, there's schools, there's marketing departments, for example, as well as community members that are involved. So we want to make sure that everybody is achieving what they set out to, so that they're having a sort of sense of return on objectives. And that's really key. We want to evolve. We want to make sure we're doing better. So this healthy questioning is what evaluation helps us to achieve. Evaluation can be holistic, where we look overall to say, are we going in the right direction? And we can also break it down into its component parts, like which bit worked well and which bit didn't, and how can we improve on this?
Evaluation in outreach programs is very important for a number of reasons. Many of these programs are either new initiatives or pilot study projects. It's therefore important to get feedback from participants who are involved in the program. We need to find out how the program is running, how the students are feeling about that program, what have been some of the major challenges, how can we overcome those challenges for those students, what are some of the support requirements that we should build in as a consequence. So all these things make up a whole list of important data that we need to address in order to improve the delivery of such programs.
I think evaluation is important. I'd like to share a story with you to highlight that. It was back in 1988 or 89, as a fledgling Aboriginal public servant, that I conducted my first evaluation. The program under evaluation was an Aboriginal specific intake for 50 young people to undertake a 12-month office clerical traineeship in the Western Australian public sector. 75% of the trainees' time was spent in a work placement at a government department, and the remaining 25% of the time was spent doing a TAFE certificate in office clerical administration. It was new government funding, a new program, and it was clearly aimed at providing a rare opportunity for young people to get a foothold for a career in government. The traineeship program was set up quite quickly, and the recruitment net was thrown widely to a diverse range of young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, mostly by what was then called the old Commonwealth Employment Service. The success rate for the completion of the traineeship was low. From memory, about 12 of the 50 trainees completed the 12 months traineeship, and only 8 of these also successfully completed the TAFE certificate. What I found from the evaluation was many of the trainees dropped out because they really wanted to be a motor mechanic or a hairdresser, or not working inside an office environment. And because it was set up quickly, many of the government departments and the supervisors were not prepared for the trainee. In some cases, this meant no structured workplace training was provided. The trainee was often used more as a dog's body for menial tasks. Without going into any more detail, this was the first time I became aware some of the reasons for the poor outcomes of government programs for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are not just related to some inherent capacities to learn and participate in the white world stemming from the negative consequences of colonisation, but rather some of the reasons for the poor outcomes can be caused by the way the program is designed and delivered. Measuring impact through evaluation can draw these types of issues out for the various stakeholders.
Evaluation of outreach activities for Indigenous students is very important. Context and relationships matter. Diversity matters, and difference needs to be appreciated, valued, and engaged with. We shouldn't engage in approaches to education that tries to be a one-size-fits-all. So what is really important here is that our frameworks for our programs and activities and our evaluation are calibrated to the participants' experiences and are able to capture that. We're also able to capture the needs and the feedback from stakeholders, and particularly from our communities. So we need to do this with a view of time and temporality, that things change, and especially the pace of change is ever increasing. So we need to make sure we build that into evaluation, and therefore that feeds back into our program design as well.
Outreach is very important because it's the foundation on which participation and successful and sustained engagement with university education is built. And therefore, the more we understand about which outreach activities are contributing most successfully, understanding that there will be different approaches and different solutions needed in different environments. So I'd highlight the learning and improvement aspects of the evaluation. Importantly, convincing sponsors about what's worthwhile and those areas which are less rewarding is important. It leads to the potential for continuation, expansion of areas, or redirection of effort. And ultimately, it's important for accountability, that people understand where resources are being applied, what's being achieved.
Evaluation is really important in projects like this, or for people working in this space, because I think anyone who is actually working here wants to be able to prove that they're doing a good job. It's why people come into the field. And we owe it to students and community to ensure that we are spending our time, money, and their time effectively. Pragmatically, good evaluation also allows us to make the argument for more funding. And I know that many equity practitioners operate on very soft money. So it's always important to be able to make that case. And finally, it helps us to understand what works so that we can move the field forward and disseminate what is working effectively through networks like AFIA.
People often ask why evaluation is important, and there are a number of reasons that it's so vital to all of the work that we do. In essence, evaluation is asking us, are we doing the things that we set out to do? Are we doing the right things? Are we doing those things the right way? But when we're thinking about programs for which people and places are really important, we have to also think about whether we're doing the right things in the right way, for the right people, and in the right places. So thinking about those particular questions, which we mightn't always consider, is an essential part of evaluation. And if we're working with culturally important groups, then those are even more important. One of the other things that we have to think about when we're doing evaluation is the program working the way we intended it? Did we do it the way we had planned? And should we do it that way the next time, or should we make adjustments? So by doing a formal evaluation and asking those questions, we can help improve what we're doing so that it becomes relevant for the next group of people, the next place, and the next iteration, because time is always important as well. We can't keep doing things the same way we always have. Our times change, so our programs need to change with them.